Hi, Dave.
How you doing?
All right, it's all
You ready?
yours.
Well,
How many do
hello,
we have
everybody.
in here? Looks like we have 7 people, so 4. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're all doing well. I'm Jody Sandoval with Fidelity National Title, and then this is Dave Hickey. And Dave is going to be instructing our class today on water rights and well. And I just wanted to say, I know that you guys have great training there at Keller Williams, and I know that they're really trying to keep you guys in front of people and using resources and all of that. I mean, it truly is a great time for this because of, you know, where we are. We're all pretty much at our homes, which I'm sure we all cannot wait to get out again. But take advantage of this time. And there is another resource. If you guys are not familiar with Breakthrough Broker, they are an amazing resource, and they have a lot of different ideas and tools and tips in there for you. If you're not signed up with them, go ahead and shoot me an email. I put my email there in the chat room so that you can send me an email if you guys want to have the CE credit for this class, because I need to get you a attestation form that you'll fill out that says that you were here during the whole class, and then we will send you your CE certs after the class is over. But if you also would like to have the Breakthrough Broker information, and we can get you set up with that, it truly is a great resource. So keep that in mind. And Dave, I'll go ahead and let you get started.
All right. Welcome, everybody, and thanks for coming on. This is new and different for me. It's the first time I am teaching this via webcam or Zoom. So I don't know what to expect from myself. I think we've got all the bugs worked out. I've taught this class itself hundreds of times. It's just I've never done it this way. As Jody mentioned, you're going to have to sign the attestment saying that you are online the whole time watching this. Once you fill that out, then we'll fill out a CE certificate for you, and we'll get that emailed over to you. This is typically a very paper-intensive class, and obviously I can't hand packets out. So everybody that we fill out a certificate for, I will also work out with Amy and somehow drop all the paperwork off, all the literature that I usually hand out at the office for her to put into your boxes. So you can look for that afterwards. You can use the chat room if you have questions. I like it to be an interactive course. Jody will be monitoring that. Also feel free to unmute and just jump in, and then you know, just make sure you remember to mute afterwards. So are there any questions before we get started? Well, let's see if I can do this then. Can you all see that?
Nope.
How about that?
Yes.
All right. Okay, so this is a 2-hour course, well water in the state of Colorado. I think there's 6 or 7 of you on here, and having not done it this way and not having all the handouts for us to look through, I don't know how long it'll take, but let's jump in and figure it out. So to figure out why we are the way we are, why we treat water the way we treat water in the state, before we get into the wells, I go through the history of water in the state. I think it's important because this helps you understand why we treat water the way we treat it. So it all comes from, and I'm not going to go through all this individually, but you can, take time to read it there. Really, it comes from first in time, first in right. When people were getting into these side streams, if they were there first, they wanted to make sure that somebody upstream didn't take the water that they were already using. So they came up with this through many different court actions, first in time, first in right, which ended up being the prior appropriation doctrine, which is what we live under now when it comes to water. It basically just said, if I was there using the water first, you can't hurt me by taking that water away. So what it really came down to through time with the water is we had the miners were the first during the gold rush to use the water to help them mine. And then when the West started getting more and more settled, they came up against the agricultural people who wanted it to grow the crops. In today's modern society, we're running into it's agriculture versus the urban, the urban use of the water, the city usage of the water. And that's where it sits today. So disparity in water and people. 80% of the people in the state of Colorado live on the eastern slope, and 20% then live on the western slope, and the water just happens to be the opposite. 80% of the water in the state lands on the western slope, and through diversions, we bring a lot of that over here. But that's always going to be the battle in the state, is where the people are and where the water is. So I had mentioned that we live under the prior appropriation doctrine. The other doctrine that's out there, which is back east, is the riparian doctrine. And under that doctrine, if that water touches your land, you have an unquestionable usage of that water. So it's not yours, it does not belong to you, but you can use it to your heart's content. But under the prior appropriation doctrine, it was adopted in the territory here in the 1860s. And basically what it says is that the water does not belong to you. If the water touches your land, that water belongs to somebody else. So there has been an adjustment to that where with rainwater, with the rainwater, you can now catch up to 110 gallons at a residential property and use that water once. And that's the only change to the prior appropriation doctrine we've had since the 1920s. So, and Colorado does have the strictest form of the prior appropriation doctrine. So everybody from the 98th meridian west lives under the prior appropriation doctrine. Everybody east of it lives under the riparian. So, any questions on prior appropriation doctrine versus riparian? It really is the basis of why, the water is the way we treat water, like it's better than gold in this state. So water definitions, and these can be a little confusing. Surface water is any water that runs on top of the ground, rivers, creeks. Groundwater is water that's found in the ground. That's what we're going to be talking about today. So your groundwater is what you get out of your wells. Yeah.
We have a question. So a stream running through a property may not be yours to use?
It is not yours to use. Absolutely not. So unless you have the actual water right, if you have some call on that stream that would give you the ability to do it. So, but that water does belong to somebody else. Does that answer the question?
Yes, we're
Okay.
good.
So, affecting groundwater, it's called it's a tributary. So a tributary joins the surface flow water, an alluvial, and it interacts between the ground and the surface water. So if you're taking your water, if you have a well that that would draw water from an alluvial, and that alluvial then would allow more water to come out of the stream down into that tributary area, that's when there's interaction between the surface water and the groundwater. Non-tributary means there is no interaction between the surface water and the groundwater. And then not non-tributary, I really have it in there just because I like to say it. But that's anything outside of the groundwater basin, the Denver groundwater basin that we're in. And we won't really talk about that. So I just want you to understand that some wells are tributary and some are non-tributary as far as the alluvials or the aquifer that they're in. And then there might be additional plans that you need to meet in conjunction with having something that is tributary, especially if you're affecting a senior water right holder. I had already mentioned this. Any state west of the 98th meridian recognizes the prior appropriation doctrine. It is the purest. I said it has been modified recently, and that's with the usage of the rainwater. That's a big one. You can use it. You can only use the groundwater, and you'll get a handout on this whole thing. You can use the rainwater outside to water plants, wash cars, do anything you want, but you can only use it once. You can't catch it again. So, once once you've squirted it at your car or whatever, you can't use it again. So water facts: water covers 70% of the Earth's surface. 97% of all water is salt water. That's leaving 3% as fresh water that is usable or potable, consumable by human beings or animals. 2% of that 3% is tied up in glaciers and ice caps. So that means the entire world's population has 1% of the water on the earth that is usable for consumption. Colorado is a semi-arid region, meaning that we have less than 15 inches of moisture on average per year. Average person in the U.S., so this is like your normal household, uses 75 to 150 gallons of water a day. In Colorado, that's 200. We use 200 gallons per day due to the agricultural use on the Eastern Plains and the Western Slope. By the year 2030, Colorado will need an additional 630,000 acre feet of new water. And most of that is it's in the South Platte, Arkansas river basins. That's basically the Front Range. So as you know, we're not going to be able to create more water. So we're going to have to figure out a way of helping society with these additional people that are moving here with by the use of this water. There's only one way that's going to happen, and that is through conservation, meaning we're probably all going to have to get rid of our Kentucky bluegrass. And then the other way is going to be through storage. We're going to have to somehow, talk the powers that be into building more reservoirs, like the Rudder Hess one that just got built down here in Douglas County. So Colorado's water supply is 99% of it is from snow. There's 7 rivers that flow out of the state of Colorado, and there's only one that flows in, and that's the Snake up in the northwest corner up there, and it just barely cuts in and cuts out. So we do have it's called 2 different things. It's the law of the river, or it's also known as a federal compact, and that states that we have to give a certain share of every flow of every river that flows out of the state of Colorado to those states, those 7 states that we supply water to. So we need to make sure that we're not hindering the flow so that they can get their share of the river. Just for your knowledge, 1 acre foot is 325,851 gallons, or 43,560 cubic feet. What that means is 1 acre flooded 1 foot deep is what that equals. So that term was invented, I think the guy's name was Taylor. He was a colonel who was one of the people that explored the West, and it's stuck, and it's been used ever since. Uses of water in the state. So 86.5% of all water used in the state is for agriculture. 6.7 municipal, recreation 3%, industrial 1.9. Augmentation and aquifer recharge is 1.9. We'll talk about augmentation plans and aquifer recharges here in a little bit. That's all stuff tied to wells. Colorado River feeds 7 states, 40 million people, 2 nations. And at this point, the Colorado River dries up by the time it gets into Mexico. We've used all the water. It's all been diverted one way or the other or used. 19 states rely on our water, from Kentucky to California. 70% of all water is used in agricultural and yards. 83% of the Colorado River is used in the Imperial Valley. If you don't know what the Imperial Valley is, if you eat vegetables in the wintertime, it's most likely that vegetable came out of the Imperial Valley. It's an area of California that grows most of the vegetables for our use. It takes 5 gallons of water to make 1 walnut, 54 gallons to make 94 gallons to make an avocado, 600 gallons to make a hamburger, and 1,600 gallons to make a steak. So you can see how important it is to agriculture. So the prior appropriation doctrine, it's the water allocation system. The water has to be put to beneficial use. It protects the current user's interest and their investment in time and money. So what I'm talking about here is a true water right under the prior appropriation doctrine. So the water court will adjudicate it. They'll do a decree to the access of the water. So this is off of surface flow. The location of the water, where it's going to come from. So it's going to come from the South Platte. You're entitled to 200 acre feet a year. The use of that has to be for agriculture. If you were to change and use that water for something else, you're not putting it to the use of your water right. You lose your right. And then everyone is assigned a priority date, and that's how it makes you who's senior, who's junior. And by the way, City and County of Denver owns most of the water rights in the area at this point. Over years, they were the first ones to start doing it, but they've acquired most of them. Between Denver and Aurora, they were the 2 forward-thinking municipalities to go after that stuff. So we're going to move into wells now. Are there any questions on kind of the history and why water is so important to us? This class is going to go fast. So, well, any structure or device used for the purpose or effect of obtaining water for beneficial use from an aquifer. How many people in the class here today have bought and sold properties with a well, own a well, have ever drilled a well? If you want to speak up or just type into chat for Jody, I'm always interested to know everybody's experience with it. So the drilling process, and I'm going to show you a video here.
Hold on real quick here.
Yep.
I had one that had a well for lawn and that type of usage.
Say
And
that
yes,
again?
you are going to get copies of the presentation.
Yeah, you'll get all of this. So it's
So Christy had a property with a well for the lawn in
okay.
Boulder.
Okay. So the drilling process, just so you understand what a well is, it's a 6 to 8 inch diameter hole drilled into the ground. The process of doing it is they put a foam down that extracts all the gravel as they go down, so that the well stays there. Once they hit a first strike of water, they typically, depending on the area, they'll go a little bit deeper to make sure they're down into it. One of the handouts I'm going to give you is it's from the state, and it shows everybody who's licensed to drill and inspect wells in the state of Colorado. It's a good reference tool for you. The thing about it, though, is if you're going to be selling a property, let's say in Elbert County, and you don't know who to call, you're going to want to call somebody local to the area. These guys all really know the areas that they work in. Hire and Company is a big one out in Elbert County, and they can walk onto almost any piece of land out there and tell you approximately how deep they're going to have to go to get a good flowing well. If you try to take them up into Weld County, they're not going to be as talented as somebody who's used to drilling up there in Weld County. So just know that you're going to want somebody who's kind of an expert in the area. So as I said, in a slow recharge area, they may go down some additional feet so that they get a buildup or storage of water within the well casing. Then they do cement and grout the entire thing, and then the pump is installed. So I'm gonna stop this screen share real quick, and I wanna show you a video that kind of explains it a lot better than I do.
Hey, Dave, we're not seeing anything.
You're not?
No.
I'm sorry. It's because I'm not used to technology. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that.
People know how wells and water systems work. So let's take a look
Can you
at the
hear,
key
Jody?
parts that make up a typical home water system. First is the well itself, a shaft or deep hole in the ground extending down into the water-bearing formations. The average well is about 200 feet deep, and most are drilled by specialized drilling equipment. Casing must always be placed in the top part of the drilled hole to prevent the risk of surface water getting into the well. In some types of rock formations, casing may extend much deeper to prevent the hole from caving in. Some wells use a well screen to let water in and to keep sand out of the well. A pump is needed to get water out of the well and into the home. Water from the aquifer is pumped from the well into a pressurized tank, which stores water for use when the pump is not running. From this distribution point, water is piped to individual use points in the home. The planning, design, and construction of a water well and home water system needs to take account of geology and environmental conditions at the building site. The first step is proper planning. How much water is required to meet the needs of expected water?
Okay, I'm going to stop that there. I hope that kind of explains it to you. It's not a great video, but when it comes to water, you really, documentaries and everything about it, there's not a whole lot that's exciting. So thanks for hanging in there. So are there any questions on how they drill the well? You know, there's a lot of information out there nowadays, like YouTube videos, and but you know, kind of important if you're ever helping somebody build something out east where they're going to be on a well. So this slide right here is going to be the most important slide, and that you're going to see today, because it's really what you need to be doing when you're going out to a property with a well. It's what you need to be aware of. The first thing is, if there's no permit on the well, technically, legally, no well exists. Before 1972, we did not permit the wells, and you will still find properties today that if the house is older than that, there's still no well on, or there's no permit on that well. It's typically not a huge deal, but it can be for a lender. If there's no permit for that well, then there's no true potable source of water. So your source of water addendum would be blank. So therein could be a problem. I've only seen it really become a problem maybe 3 or 4 times in 22 years. But, you know, you don't want to be that couple of times that I've seen. So, because then you got to go through the process of getting the thing permitted before the lender's going to loan on it. If the permit doesn't match the actual use, no well exists technically. So if you have a household permit and you're using it, I said that back. If you have a domestic well permit and you're using it for household purposes, then those are 2 different types of well. One says you can't water anything outside the property. So if you're outside the house, it's only for the household, is only for internal water usage. So why anybody would get one of those, I don't know, because with the other one, you get up to, you can water up to an acre of lawn and garden. So, but you also have to watch, and you will get examples of this. I just can't give them to you today, but you gotta, if there's a permit, you want to look at that permit and actually see what it says. If you're selling a horse property and you know the listing states that you can have up to 10 horses on the well, but then you look at the permit and the permit says you can only have 3. Well, then obviously a listing agent didn't look at their permit and they've been advertising the thing incorrectly. So you wouldn't, if your people have 10 horses, you wouldn't want to purchase that property. So check with the Division of Water Resources to see if the well is operating on an augmentation plan. And we're going to talk about augmentation plans. It's basically a way of regenerating the water in an area should you somehow affect a senior water holder to your well. So the Division of Water Resources is probably the easiest and best governmental agency to deal with. I never ever have a problem with them. I get my questions answered right away. They really know their stuff. So if you're ever having a hard time finding something, then just call them up. I think it's dwr.co.us.gov or something like that. But just Google Colorado Division of Water Resources. You will not be disappointed in them. So you want to know the age of the well. That can be important. If it's been there for a long time, is the equipment in good shape? What is the pump rate? So you're going to do a test on every well to see how many gallons per minute you're getting. What they do is they turn the water on, they let it run for about a half hour, and then they see how much is coming out at that point. A residential well permit will allow you up to 15 gallons per minute. Most wells will not produce 15 gallons per minute. You'll be getting 7 or 8. Sometimes it's less, and you might want to then have some type of cistern type system, which most of them probably have anyways, but you want to make sure there's some way to pool that water so that when there's a high call or demand, from the household, there's enough there to fulfill that. On-site inspections, you want to make sure you get that thing inspected. Make sure that everything's working and looking correctly. You want to make sure there's easy access for maintenance and repair. Did they plant a tree, an oak tree next to it, 30 years ago, and now that thing's gotten pretty big, and if you needed to get a truck out there, it's going to be really hard to get something in close to it. Sanitary conditions. Is it below the leaching field? Is that wellhead below the leaching field? Is it clean? Is it still above ground? Does the ground slope away from it? Just like from this, you want that on the foundation. The positive drainage. Make sure that the casing is still above ground and it has a watertight seal. So distance of well from contaminants. I mentioned a leaching field. You want it to be at least 50 feet, but more preferably 100 feet. So, and then make sure you conduct a water quality test on the water. So, the pamphlet you're going to get, and we'll pull it out. It's actually a pretty thick pamphlet. In fact, I put a binder clip on it. It is so thick, but this will have all the type of people that you want to call in there, and you'll get a copy of that. And one of the most important, yeah.
The Division of Water Resources is at the first step to investigate permits for a property.
Well, the first thing I do is I'd ask the people if they have a copy. So if they have a copy, it'll have all that information right on it. If not, you can go to their website. You can do on their website, you can do a search. You can do it by address, legal description, subdivision, owner's name. There's a lot of different ways you can do the search. If you can't find it on the website, then I would call and say, hey, I'm having a hard time locating this. Can you help me out? One of the problems, the easiest way to do it is to search by name. And one of the biggest problems with that is prior to 3 or 5 years ago, there was no requirement for anybody to change the name on the well permit. So a lot of times you'll find that the well permit in a property has, that hasn't been exchanged in probably, let's say 10 years. It's not in your owner's name. It's in 3 owners prior to that's name. So then that doing it by name sometimes can be hard to find that way. There has been a new law passed where title companies are required to do the paperwork to change the name on the permit. So anything that in the past 5 years, we're starting to catch all this stuff and we're getting it all caught up. So does that answer the question?
Yep, perfect.
Okay. And I don't know where I left off, but talking with the neighbors, very important, because they can tell you how their water is, how their water flows. you know, you got your straw on the ground at almost the same place that they do. So most of them will be pretty honest with you and kind of let you know what's going on. So like I said, you will get a copy of this, so pay attention to that slide there. So now we're going to talk about the types of wells that you're going to run into. And this is the most, you're going to run into, what you're running into most of the time is going to be an exempt well. And I said, like I said, it's limited to 15 gallons per minute in your usage. It has to have a wastewater disposal system of a non-evaporative type. And if you can get to city water, or if city water is available, they will not let you drill a well now. So you have to hook up to city water. So I mentioned household and domestic. So household, this is the permit I would say you never want. I don't know why anybody would, but they are out there. It's issued for households of a single family type, and it does not allow for any outside watering. So you can't wash your car, you can't do your landscape. All you can do is bathe, shower, and wash dishes and drink water. Domestic and livestock wells only allow one well on the property, but it can serve up to 3 single-family homes. That actually, I run into that about once a year, where you've got grandma and grandpa have been on the property for 60, 70 years. Mom and dad have, built a house next door to them, and then the son is now going to build the house next to him. So that one well, if it can handle it, can serve all 3 of those dwellings. It can irrigate up to 1 acre of lawn or garden, and provide water for domestic animals and livestock. And that is typically called out in every permit. So I'm not going to really go, I put it there, but I don't really go into the commercial exempt wells. There's one place I can think of out at Delbert and Singing Hills. If you guys know where that is, there's a little 7-Eleven area out there. That is an example of what would be on a commercial exempt well. But we really don't need to go into that. I just lay out the different types of wells. So, unregistered existing wells. We already kind of mentioned this. It was at May 8th, 1972, when they started saying we need to know where all these straws are in the ground, and we want to start getting all these things registered. So, like I said, prior to that, you might run into something that is unregistered, but everything after that should be registered. If you have the well, and let's say the house was built in 85, but you can't find any type of a permit. It's not that it doesn't happen; it has happened, but most well drillers won't do it without going and applying for the well permit. So, and I kind of talked about the lender piece of it, but let's down here at the bottom. If you have an unregistered well and it goes dry, well, you're going to have to get that thing registered, and it's going to take a while to do that. Even if you are registered and you're re-drilling the well, you still need to register the new well. And I've got a packet I'll give you of all the different type of permits and the cost of recording all of them or applying for them. But even if you re-drill a well, you're still going to have to get a new permit on that new well. So just be aware of that. But the loan piece is something to really pay attention to if it's an unregistered well. If it's a cash deal, doesn't really matter. So
We have another question.
Okay.
If it does not have a permit and you're told it was prior to requiring permits, where can you research such a well for a buyer?
So if I get it right, it was built before 72 and there's no permit is the question? Jody?
It just says if a property does not have it and you were told it was prior to requiring permits, so probably, sounds like.
So you're gonna have to, you'll get this handout. I've pulled for you, and I have pulled for you for samples, all the different well permits. The ones that are, it's not all of them, but the ones that are important to you, are gonna be important to the residential real estate. There's actually one in here to register an unregistered well. So you would just simply fill that out and send it in. What they're gonna do is they're gonna ask you, what is the use of the well? What is the historical use of that well? I always say, you know, don't go easy on yourself. Say you used it for this, this, and that. And as long as you can prove it, you know, like if you say that it's a domestic livestock well and, you know, historical uses, I have 10 animals on it. If they send an inspector out and you've got 2 horses there, they're going to know, they're going to think, oh, you know, they were lying to me. There's only 2 horses. So they may not give you the permit for 10 horses, but they'll give you the permit for 2 horses. It's not that they're not going to give it to you. You just have to you just have to prove the historical use of it. I hope that answers it.
Vicky? Are you good? Maybe we should unmute some of these people.
I think they can unmute themselves.
I don't, well, I think, hold on. Vicky, did that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Good.
Oh, okay, good.
So this next slide, this is probably the most confusing thing when it comes to wells and water rights that I run into. You know, people come to me and they say, well, you know, I've got this water right and, you know, I think it's worth some money. I want to keep it. Well, the first thing I ask is it from a stream or is it from a well? They say it's from a well. Well, an adjudication goes with the well. It's not something that's worth any money away from the well. So just to explain what an adjudication is, I think we probably all know the word adjudication. It's, you know, the court action of going to court and having something adjudicated or made legal by the court, a right given to me by the court for a certain thing. I was adjudicated on that. So when you get a well adjudication, you go into the court and you're asking for a priority and pump rate to be guaranteed to you. So a well adjudication, although it is a form of a legal right, it's not a true water right. It's really not worth anything away from that well. So I just want everybody to understand that. Now it does guarantee you, you know, stuff. So, you know, you get your well adjudicated. It costs about $2,500 to $3,000, my understanding nowadays, to adjudicate your well. And they, you know, it's a good thing to do, you know, because let's say you get your well adjudicated for 2 acre-feet of water at a 15 gallon per minute water flow. Well, if in the future, once we have 100,000 more people living out here, let's say the legislature goes forward and says, okay, we're running out of water. We don't have enough water for all these people. So how are we going to conserve? Well, one of the first things they're probably going to do is they're going to cut that flow rate out of a well from a guaranteed 15 to, let's say, 7. Well, if you're adjudicated, you're grandfathered. That well has a right to that 15 gallons per minute and so many acre-feet of water per year. So it really is a good thing to do, but I just really want to get across that it's not like a true water right that, you know, if you own a true water right call from a stream, it's worth more than gold. So, but a well adjudication water right is not the same. I hope that makes sense. This is where I like to be able to look at people and have hands raised and, know if I need to answer a question. So does anybody not understand a well adjudication then? If you can just type in to Jody real quick.
I'm good, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, they can unmute themselves, so that's good.
So the type of well permits, we have the ones you're going to use most often are GWS, which is the groundwater name for these permits, 44 and 45. The one you're going to use most often is 44, and that you can apply both for household and domestic on that. And this is where I wish you had the handout so I could go through, examples of them, and how they're filled out, and what the driller does, what the state does, and how it all looks. You will get the copies. You will see that. So just right now, not right now. Sorry about that. So if you're doing a replacement well, let's say your well goes dry, and you do a replacement well. You're going to use the same ones, 44 or 45. You're just going to mark it replacement instead of new. We didn't really talk that. There's different types of wells, and these are getting more and more popular. The geothermal well, where they're using, it's a closed loop system well that is used to heat a house, because it can keep a constant temperature. And they just rotate the water through the system, just like it's radiant floor heating is what it is. If you abandon a well, you have to fill out that number 9 form. They want to know where that well is and why it's abandoned. I don't know if everybody remembers who baby Jessica is. But that was a abandoned well that wasn't properly cared for, that she fell down into. So part of the well abandonment, they want to know that you have sealed that thing off, and something like that's not going to happen. So you use the 12 form. We talked about the registering of an existing well. So if you have a well that's never been registered, but you need to get it registered, you'd use that 12 form. And then the one that we fill out at closing now, for any property that has a well, is change of ownership. So, and that's number 11. So, and like I said, you'll get copies of all those. But again, the copies I give you, don't use them in one of your transactions. They're there as an example for you to see. I would always go to the website and pull off a new one. It's a very easy website. It's very easy to find them on the website. And that's just in case they change something. And that's it. We did it in an hour. If everybody's quiet, I'll still give you the 2 hours, because it's usually a very interactive class, but we can't have that in this case. Any questions at this point?
Yes, I have a question. Whoops. Let me see. I'm mute. Let me see here. Let's see. If what's I gonna say? How do you determine? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. How do you determine how deep or how big of a well you need for a household? Is there a determination by the number of people living in a household, or?
Well, your cistern tank, the well would be what the well is. They would drill to a depth that they were comfortable with. you would put a cistern tank somewhere on the property, usually basement of the house or something, that could store up the water, depending on the number of people and the number of bathrooms.
Okay. Okay.
Good question.
So the cistern is a separate holding tank.
That is, yeah. So the well would pump to the cistern tank, and then that would be used for a household usage. So from there, it could go to a hot water tank, or directly into the house.
Okay. Another question is what determines how deep a well should be?
Geography.
Okay.
So that's why I said it's important to use somebody who's familiar with the area, because they're going to know to hit good water in the Denver or Dawson aquifer, or whatever your permit's for. They're going to know in that area how far they're going to have to go down to get good water.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so it would be that licensed well engineer.
Correct.
Okay.
And like I said, you'll be getting a handout of everybody who's licensed in the state.
Okay.
Are all the wells like potable water, or should there be like a filtration system added to them?
There should be, yeah, you should. I would put a filtration system on mine. Yes. And that's part of the well process is to screen out almost everything it can. But yeah, you're going to want a filtration system to clean that water before it's brought in. I mean, the earth is a natural filtration system. And and Larry, when you go down, it's not like when you get into the Denver aquifer, it's not like there's this big underground lake. It's really some type of porous rock, sand, and then that water is just coming into that hole and coming up out of there.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? So I don't know if all of you were on when we started. We have an attestation form that we need everyone to fill out if you guys want the CE credit for this class. So if you can email me and I will send that over to you, you can fill it out, send it back to me, and then we'll send you your CE certs. And I did put that in the chat box. It's jsandoval@fnf.com.
Will you put it back in here? I don't see it in there.
It's at the top of the chat. Or if you can pull up your chat. Do you see the chat at the bottom?
I do, but the chat only shows from when I joined.
Oh, it does? Okay. Here, let me do it again and see if I can. I don't know why it wouldn't let me.
So so if you want the CE credits, make sure you give her your email. She'll email it to you. And then we'll drop off a folder with everybody's name on it to Amy, so Amy can put them in your boxes and you guys can go in and get all this different paperwork and peruse through it, whenever you get a chance.
Why is that not? Huh. Hey, Dave, can you chat it? Because it's not letting me.
SANDOVAL.
Yeah. And then we have a question from Teresa. If a well has to be repaired or drilled again, how much would it cost?
So I always say, and another great question, sorry. To drill a well I always say it's right in tune with a water tap fee with the city. So, you're looking anywhere from, depending on the depth of a well, $25,000 to $45,000 typically to drill a well, which is about the same cost of a tap fee. I think is $35,000 to $40,000 now, just to hook up to the city water. To repair a well, I mean, sometimes they can just take a well and they can just go deeper. With that cost, that is hard to determine. It depends on what they're drilling into, you know, what the rock formation's like, and how far they have to go. So I can kind of tell you what the typical drilling of a well costs, but to go deeper in the same well, it's a little bit harder.
That would probably be something to check for your buyers on how old that well is, correct?
Oh yeah, yeah. That's in that due diligence slide.
Oh, okay.
That's one of the points is how old is that well?
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. And like I said, you'll get a copy of that.
Thank you so much.
Uh-huh.
When you're looking at a well report, what is the most important thing that you should look at?
Well, if you do a well report, everything's important. You know, you want to make sure that the water's good. You want to make sure that it's not contaminated. I mean, I think that would probably be the most important thing. But you know, that could be my opinion. But you know, for me, I want to know that it is a potable source of water, because we can. That's a little bit harder to fix. You know, if my flow rate or something else isn't good, that's all stuff that can be fixed. But if somehow your water's being naturally contaminated, that's not easy to fix.
What would cause the contaminations? Like I had one where they tested it and there was like lead, iron, stuff like that in the testing. Any
type of, I'm going to use an extreme example. Let's say you live out by the old Rocky plant out there off of, 93 out by Superior.
Yeah.
You know, obviously, you know, they're still finding uranium contamination in the ground out there. I'd be very wary of having a well in that area, just because of what could be there from having the Rocky plant out there beforehand. So, you know, you get out, the old military installations, you know, like Lowry, they had to remove the top 20 feet, I think, of topsoil off of that and replace it because of all the asbestos that was found in the ground. I mean, all that type of stuff could somehow, you know, get into your water source. So, you know, again, Lowry is another extreme example because everybody there would be on, you know, they're on municipal water anyways. But, you know, just as an example, you know, that's, you know, those are things that, you know, could be out there that you'd really want to pay attention to. I just forgot the name, what river it was. I think I want to say it was the upper part of the Arkansas, but you know, that mine that all that uranium water washed out into the river and it turned it orange for a week. You know, eventually all that's going to get down into the groundwater. So things like that.
When you put the filtration systems on those wells, does it filtrate out like the fluorides and everything? Because Colorado water has natural fluoride in it. Is that correct?
I don't know that to be a fact. I always thought it was an additive.
Okay.
So,
my other job's a hygienist, so I'm just wondering if it filtrates out the fluoride out of those wells. Okay.
I don't know the filtration systems well enough to know exactly what it does. I mean, it's, you know, to the extent of, you know, my knowledge, it gives you a potable source of water.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Sorry.
It's okay.
Are there any areas around the I-76 corridor up to Wiggins, Fort Morgan, those areas? Any area that's that you know of that would be causing contamination to be aware of?
No, you know, not off. There's no what are they called? The government super zones or whatever. That's not the right word. Nothing I'm aware of. I mean, the only thing that stands out in my mind on the area you just spoke of are all the gravel pits that have filled up. So you might find stuff inside some of those gravel pits, but that would be the only thing. But there's no nobody's ever told me. I've never heard of anything that stays in my mind.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Any other questions?
I have another one. If a well report shows that it had been contaminated and it's corrected, or that it was corrected, will it continue to be contaminated from time to time, that you would have to correct it? Is that something you should be concerned about?
I think I would be concerned, but I mean, that's very difficult to answer. I mean, that would be situational. I mean, was it something that did it once, or did some type of E. coli get into the well? Or is there some uranium water that is somehow getting into that area? It's very situational. That would be a hard one to answer straight up.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
So I got an email from Nanette, Larry, Teresa for the class cert. Vicki and Christy, do you guys want that?
Yes, please.
Okay, if you can email me.
Where do we email?
So if you go into your chat box at the bottom
At the bottom. Yeah.
and pull that up, and then you'll see from Dave Hickey, it's J Sandoval at FNF. If you can email me, and I'll get one over to you.
I don't see anything at the bottom.
So let me just give it to you. So it's my first initial, last name Sandoval, SANDOVAL, at FNF for Frank, Nancy Frank.com. So J Sandoval at FNF.com.
J Sandoval at FNF.com.
Yep, J Sandoval, correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Send you an email.
And then Christy, do you need a cert?
She put in the chat that she did send you an email.
Oh, hold on. I wonder if it went into the, let me just make sure I have it. Yes, it went into my junk, so we're good. I will move that over. Thank you. So I think that's it. Vicki, we'll just wait for yours. Any other questions for anybody?
No,
We
I
appreciate-
did. Thank you.
You're welcome. We
Yeah.
appreciate you all coming out.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you
Sure.
very much.
Stay safe.
Uh-huh.
You too, thank you.
All right, have a great day.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye. Hey, Dan.